The snowstorm was so intense that seeing beyond 1 meter was impossible. The temperature had dropped to -30 degrees, and 8 British soldiers were lost in the frozen mountains of Norway, with no hope of rescue. This isn't just a story about getting lost. This is a story of courage, endurance, and a survival struggle that pushed human limits to the edge. And today, I'm taking you to one of the most mysterious events of 1940. Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm going to tell you one of the least known but most chilling stories from World War II. If you love real events hidden in history's dark corners, you're in the right place. And please, subscribe. Don't miss this video because there's a shocking detail at the end that will blow your mind. April 1940, Europe is in flames. Hitler's forces seem unstoppable, and now they've set their sights on Norway. Why Norway? Because Norway is the transit point for the valuable iron ore that Nazi Germany gets from Sweden. Without this iron, the German war machine could grind to a halt. That's why the British and French are launching an urgent military operation to defend Norway. The operation's name? Counter to Operation Weserübung. But the truth is, neither side is prepared for such challenging terrain. Norway's northern regions have some of the world's wildest, most ruthless natural conditions. Mountains, glaciers, and endless winter. And right here, elite soldiers from the British Royal Forces are being sent. Now don't forget to hit that like button because this story is about to get darker. April 24, 1940. 40 kilometers north of Narvik, a small British outpost has been established. The troops stationed here are tasked with monitoring German movements and gathering intelligence. But the terrain is a bigger threat than the enemy. Weather conditions are so extreme that soldiers are forced to stay confined for days. That day, a patrol team of 8 men is given a special mission. German activity has been detected in one of the northern valleys and reconnaissance is needed. The team leader is Sergeant James Harrington, 32 years old, an experienced soldier. He'd previously served in France, a cool-headed and disciplined commander. With him are 7 young soldiers, most in their 20s, some in a real combat zone for the first time. The patrol begins at 0600 hours. Weather reports say acceptable, but in Norway, weather can change in minutes. The soldiers are fully equipped. Ski gear, winter uniforms, radios, weapons, and 5 days' worth of rations. The plan is simple. Travel 30 kilometers to the northern valley, locate German positions, and return. Maximum 48 hours. But nothing goes according to plan. Around 1400 hours, the last radio message comes from the patrol team. Harrington's voice, weather deteriorating rapidly, visibility decreasing, holding our position. Then static, then silence. An hour later, they try again. No response. By evening, a full blizzard hits. An extreme storm even by Norwegian standards. Winds blowing at 100 kilometers per hour. Temperature dropping to -35. Visibility, 0. Alarm is raised at the outpost, search and rescue teams prepare, but going outside means suicide. The storm will last 3 days. 3 long, merciless days. Subscribe to our channel because we share true stories like this every week. When the storm subsides, search operations begin. British and Norwegian forces comb every inch of ground. But there's no trace. 8 soldiers, as if wiped from the face of the earth. No ski tracks, no campfires, no signals. Just endless, white silence. Days turn to weeks, weeks to months. The war intensifies. The situation in Norway worsens, and finally, British forces are forced to withdraw from Norway in June. The 8 soldiers are listed as missing. Families are told they were probably killed in enemy fire, but the truth is far more complex. Subscribe now, please, and let's dive deeper into the story. Now the really hair-raising part of the story begins. August 1940. The war is now raging far from Norway, but a local Norwegian hunter, wandering in the mountains, finds something. At first, he thinks it's a frozen animal carcass, but as he approaches, he sees a frozen body wearing a British uniform. The man immediately alerts the authorities. A team is sent to the area, and what they find shocks everyone. Not one, but 3 frozen bodies. All British soldiers, and all in the same spot, positioned as if they'd tried to sleep. But the strangest thing is the items found, beside the bodies. A backpack. Inside, completely unused rations, a working radio, ammunition, and most importantly, a journal. Sergeant Harrington's journal. This journal will become a document that occupies British military historians and war experts for months to come. Because what's written inside demands logical explanations, and some pages are filled with notes that still can't be understood. Watch the video to the end, because I'll explain what was written in the journal in the next segment. The journal's first pages are quite orderly. Harrington writes the mission details, weather conditions, positions, team morale. But from the 3rd day on, the handwriting begins to change, more shaky, more chaotic, and the notes gradually become shorter and more incomprehensible. One line particularly stands out. We no longer know where we are. Compass not working. Stars are wrong. Stars are wrong. What does this mean? How could a soldier write such a thing while using stars for navigation? Terror? The effects of hypothermia? Or is there really something? The other bodies weren't found. 5 soldiers still missing, and the journal's last lines contain brief information about them. Johnson and Davies decided to go south. I tried to stop them, but nobody listens to anyone anymore. Williams wanted to make a fire, but there's no fuel. We'll stay here. Maybe someone will find us. We'll stay here. This sentence shows the last hope, but at the same time, giving up. Because Sergeant Harrington, as an experienced soldier, knows that moving in these conditions is more dangerous, but waiting also means death. At the time, a brief news item appears in the British press. 3 of the missing soldiers found, but no details are given. Families only receive the information that they died honorably. The journal is classified by military intelligence. Why? Because it contains sensitive information? Or is there another reason? In part 2, I'll tell you what was written in that journal and what happened to the other 5 soldiers. Don't go anywhere. After the war, this incident is almost forgotten, but in the 1990s, a British historian working in Norwegian archives comes across this file and notices something. What's written in the journal doesn't match the official reports. The official report says, lost as result of enemy contact, but the journal doesn't mention a single German soldier. This inconsistency raises new questions. Did these soldiers really get lost, or did something else happen? Why was the radio working but no distress call was made? Why weren't the rations finished? These questions will be answered in part 2, because in the journal's undeciphered pages there are incredible details, and the traces of the other 5 soldiers will be found years later in the most unexpected places. Friends, this story doesn't end here. On the contrary, it gets even deeper. In the next episode, we'll discover the codes in the journal, the soldiers' final moments, and what really happened in those frozen Norwegian mountains. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your thoughts are very valuable to me. See you in the next video. Welcome back to the continuation of the story, everyone. In the previous episode, we started the story of 8 British soldiers who went missing in the frozen mountains of Norway in 1940. 3 bodies had been found, and with them was Sergeant James Harrington's mysterious journal. Today, we'll discover what was written in that journal, what happened to the other 5 soldiers, and the truths behind this tragic event. If you're watching this video for the first time, please watch part 1 first, or you'll miss a lot of details. If you're ready, let's begin. 1945. The war has ended. Europe is trying to rebuild.
and the British War Office begins comprehensive archival work on missing soldiers. Thousands of files, reports, and documents are being examined. It's right at this moment that Harrington's journal resurfaces. The journal is analyzed by military psychologists and field experts, and the picture that emerges is both tragic and fascinating, because this journal isn't just a soldier's notes, it's also a document of how the human mind works under extreme conditions, where courage and despair intertwine. Don't forget to hit that like button because there are incredible details in this episode. The journal's first pages begin on the morning of April 24, 1940. Harrington writes in an orderly and disciplined manner. 0600 hours, patrol mission commenced. Team, received orders from Captain Morrison. With me are Lieutenant Cooper, Private Johnson, Private Davies, Private Williams, Private Matthews, Private Thompson, and Private Scott. Weather clear, temperature -15, morale high. Objective, enemy reconnaissance in Northern Valley. Estimated duration, 48 hours. Up to this point, everything's normal. But in the afternoon, the first signs of concern appear. 14:30 hours, weather changed rapidly. Clouds moving in very fast. Wind intensified. Lieutenant Cooper did map check. We're en route, but visibility decreasing. Considering making camp, but haven't reached target point yet. An hour later, the critical decision moment. 15:45 hours, blizzard started. Full blown, can't see beyond 1 meter. Made emergency camp, struggling to secure tents. Wind incredibly strong. Tried to reach headquarters by radio, but signal weak. Relayed message, holding our position. Response was unclear. This is the last message sent to headquarters. After this, the team is completely alone. The journal's second day, the situation starts deteriorating. April 25th, morning. Storm continued all night. One of the tents blew away. Thompson and Scott tried to find it, but couldn't. All the rations inside were lost too. Now we have less supplies. Radio's working, but we can't get any signal. It's like we're completely isolated. Weather very cold. Team's cold, but trying to keep spirits up. As leader, Harrington tries to keep the team's morale high, but what he writes in the journal shows his real concern. Talked with Cooper. If the storm doesn't calm down tomorrow, we need to move south, but moving without visibility is very risky. No GPS, have compass, but don't know if it's enough in these conditions. Can't see the stars, everything's white. Here's an interesting detail. Harrington says no GPS. Of course not, because GPS technology didn't exist back then. But this phrase shows how lost the soldiers were and how much they needed modern navigation tools. They have to rely on the compass, but magnetic compasses can sometimes be misleading at such high latitudes. Third day, serious changes began in the journal. April 26th, storm hasn't stopped, got even worse. Temperature dropped terribly. Thermometer showing -32. Johnson's fingers froze. Williams is looking after him. Rations running low, eating 2 meals a day. But worst of all, we no longer know exactly where we are. Compass making strange movements. Cooper checked it, it's working, but the needle trembles when pointing direction. There can be magnetic variations at these high latitudes, but it shouldn't be this severe. Subscribe to my channel because I share true stories from the depths of history like this every day. The complaints about the compass are a very important clue to navigation experts. Northern Norway is quite close to the North Pole. In these regions, magnetic field lines are almost vertical, and the compass needle may not work properly. But experienced soldiers know this and can find direction using stars. The problem is, they can't see the stars because of the storm. Fourth day, the handwriting in the journal begins to change. More shaky, more disorganized. April 27, terrible night. Thompson and Matthews said they saw something while on watch. Lights. In the distance, in the mountains. Maybe headquarters is looking for us, we said. Shot signal flare, but no response came. Lights disappeared. Maybe they imagined it. Everyone very tired. Sleep irregular. Cold. Constantly cold. Lights. This is very interesting. In that region of Norway, the northern lights are very common. Aurora borealis illuminates the sky, especially during winter months. But experienced soldiers would know this. So why does Harrington say, maybe they imagined it? Because one of the early effects of hypothermia is perception disorders. The mind can see unreal things due to fatigue and cold. Fifth day. The seriousness of the situation increases. April 28th. Johnson and Davies fought. Johnson says we must head south immediately. Davies says we should wait until the storm subsides. Cooper intervened. I tried to calm them down too, but the team is fragmenting. Morale dropped badly. Everyone's scared. Rations running out, now eating 1 meal a day. Williams said several people are showing signs of frostbite, especially Scott. His fingers turned purple. Can't move. Team dynamics begin to break down. This is a very critical point in survival situations. Without group cohesion, chances drop dramatically. Harrington, as leader, tries to keep the group together, but conditions are too harsh. 6th day, there's a shocking entry in the journal. April 29th, storm eased a bit, visibility opened up somewhat, but the landscape we saw shocked us. Our surroundings completely unrecognizable. Doesn't match anywhere on the map. It's like we're in a completely different place. Cooper checked the map over and over. Impossible, he said. This place isn't on the map. How can this be? Maybe we went the wrong direction. Maybe we veered way off course. But this much? This part is truly chilling. How could experienced soldiers think they're in a place that's not on the map? The explanation is actually simple, but tragic. They veered so far off course in the storm that they could be in a completely different valley than they estimated. That region of Norway consists of thousands of square kilometers of untouched wilderness. British maps weren't that detailed either. The German invasion was quick, and the British couldn't fully map the region. 7th day, the tragedy deepens. April 30, Johnson and Davies left. Couldn't stop them. We're heading south, they said. You can wait if you want, but we're going. Cooper and I tried to convince them, but they wouldn't listen. They took their weapons, their rations, and left. Now there are 6 of us. Really bad effect on morale. Everyone's silent. William said the frostbite signs on Scott's feet are getting worse. He can't walk anymore. The 2 soldiers leaving is the beginning of the group's fragmentation. Johnson and Davies decide to seek their chances alone, but the consequences of this decision will be terrible. Watch the video to the end because I'll explain what happened to Johnson and Davies. 8th day, one of Harrington's last orderly entries. May 1st, even the date has lost its meaning now. Scott died, tonight, in his sleep. From cold. Williams did what he could, but it wasn't enough. We buried his body under the snow, our first loss. But it won't be the last. Everyone knows. Thompson cried, a young kid, only 19 years old. What will his family think? When his mother learns her son died in this cold place, what will she do? These lines show Harrington's human side. As a leader, he tries to appear strong, but there's deep sorrow inside him. Scott's death completely destroys the team's morale. 9th day, the journal now has your regular notes. May 2nd, radio's still working, but nobody's answering. I keep calling. This is British Patrol 7, urgent assistance needed, position unknown. No response. Maybe wrong frequency, maybe we're too far, maybe nobody's listening anymore. This detail about the radio is very important, because when the bodies were found, the radio was in working condition. But why wasn't a distress call made? Answer, it was, but nobody heard it. Either the frequency was wrong or they were out of signal range. Or the outpost had been evacuated due to German attacks and there was nobody listening.
10th day, one of the most cryptic entries in the journal. May 3, don't know the date anymore. Night or day, doesn't matter. Everything's the same. White, cold, silent. Stars are wrong. Looked at the sky. Stars are in the wrong place. Maybe I'm looking wrong. Maybe my mind isn't working anymore. So tired. Stars are wrong. This sentence occupied experts for years. How can stars be wrong? Explanation: hypothermia and hunger disrupt brain function. A person looks at the stars but can't recognize them, or, due to coordination disorder, can't match the compass with the stars. Harrington realizes his mind is clouding but can't stop it. 11th day, the last orderly entry. Matthews died. Williams too, same night, freezing. Thompson and Cooper and I, 3 people left. Rations gone. Radio working but no response. Can't move anymore. Too weak. Cooper says we need to stay here and wait for help. He's right. Moving is suicide, but waiting is too. God help us. This is the last comprehensible entry in the journal. The following pages are confused and disorganized, some words unreadable,
some sentences incomplete, and one page, just a single word, cold. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the story isn't over. Harrington, Cooper, and Thompson decide to stay at that point. They reinforce their tents, sit close to each other, and wait for help. But help doesn't come. Days pass, their bodies slowly depleting. The final stages of hypothermia begin: mental confusion, loss of muscle control, lethargy, and finally, sleep. A deadly sleep. When these three bodies were found in August 1940, their positions were striking. They were as if embracing each other. This is a known survival tactic to preserve last warmth, but it wasn't enough. So what happened to the other 5 soldiers? Johnson and Davies, after heading south, were never seen again. Searches were conducted for years, but their bodies were never found. Most likely scenario, they fell into a crevasse or were buried in an avalanche. That region of Norway is full of countless deep crevasses and glacier cracks. The 2 soldiers, walking in darkness and storm, could have fallen into such a crack, and under the ice, they could be lost forever. Scott's body, as Harrington said, had been buried under snow, but when that area was found, there was no trace of a grave. Snow had fallen so heavily, it covered everything. Williams and Matthews died in the same place as Harrington, but their bodies were never found. Why? Because the storm probably dragged and carried away the bodies, or they were moved by wild animals. Wolves, foxes, and eagles are very common in that region. Keep watching, because there's one more secret to this story. In 2003, a British mountaineering group was doing an expedition tour in the same region of Norway, and in an area where the glacier was melting, they found a metal object. When they got closer, they saw it was an old British military ID tag. Engraved on it, Private Thomas Williams, Royal Marines. The tag was sent to the National War Museum, and it was matched with the records there. Williams was a member of the Lost Patrol team, but his body was never found, only the ID tag. This discovery raised a question. If glaciers continue to melt, could the other bodies be found too? As climate change melts glaciers everywhere in the world, the secrets of the past are coming to light. Maybe one day, the bodies of Johnson, Davies, or the others will also be found. But maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe some stories should remain in the dark, because the truth might be far more merciless than we imagine. Harrington's journal is preserved today in the British National Archives. It's an important document for military historians and psychologists, because this journal shows how leadership, group dynamics, and the human mind work under extreme conditions. A psychologist, after analyzing the journal, said this: Harrington was an extraordinary leader. Until his last moment, he tried to protect his team, but even the strongest will can be insufficient against the force of nature. In the next and final episode, I'll talk about the lessons to be learned from this story and its effects on modern military operations. Don't miss it. These 8 British soldiers lost their lives in the effort to do their duty, for country, for freedom, and for friends. Their courage should never be forgotten, because they weren't just soldiers. They were sons, brothers, friends, and they were all very young. The oldest was 32, the youngest was 19. Their families wondered for years where they were. Some mothers, until they died, hoped, "My son will return one day." Some wives never remarried because there was still hope inside them. When the war ended in 1945, the British government erected monuments to honor all missing soldiers. The names of the 8 soldiers are also written on the War Memorial in London. Every year on November 11th, people come there, leave flowers, and commemorate them. But in Norway, in those mountains, silence reigns. Snow falls continuously throughout the year. The wind howls, and perhaps still there, under the ice, the bodies of the 5 missing soldiers lie, waiting to be found one day. This story reminds us what courage means, but at the same time, how merciless war is. These soldiers didn't die from enemy bullets. They died from the force of nature. but their death is no less honorable than being killed by the enemy, because they died while doing their duty. Friends, the second episode ends here. I hope these details could better tell you what was experienced in those days. In the next and final episode, we'll discuss this event's effects on military strategy, modern survival techniques, and what this story teaches us. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Welcome to the final part, everyone. If you've made it this far, it means you truly value this story. In the first 2 episodes, we told the tragic story of 8 British soldiers who went missing in the frozen mountains of Norway in 1940. We examined Sergeant Harrington's journal, discovered the soldiers' final days, and saw what happened in those terrible conditions. Today, in the final episode, we'll discuss this event's impact on military history, modern survival techniques, and the legacy left by these brave men. This episode isn't just an ending, it's also a beginning, because this story still teaches us important lessons today. If you're ready, let's begin our final journey. The 1940 Norwegian Campaign is a controversial operation in British military history. Many historians argue this operation was conducted with inadequate preparation, and Harrington's patrol is one of the most painful examples of this. But this tragedy gave important lessons to future military operations. Don't forget to hit that like button, because in this episode we'll discuss everything from military strategy to modern survival techniques. After the war, the British Army comprehensively analyzed the Norwegian operations. Thousands of reports were written, mistakes were listed, and new protocols were developed. Here are the most important lessons learned from Harrington's patrol. 1. Weather intelligence. In 1940, weather forecasting technology was quite primitive. Soldiers relied on local information and simple barometers, but in extreme terrain like Norway, weather can change in minutes. Harrington's team set out after receiving an acceptable weather report, but 3 hours later, they were in the middle of a full-blown blizzard. After this incident, the British Army established special meteorology units. Continuous weather observation stations were set up in Norway, Iceland, and the North Atlantic region, and soldiers began moving not just according to general weather reports, but according to micro-region forecasts. Today, modern armies use satellite technology and AI-supported weather forecasting systems, but back then, these technologies didn't exist, and this deficiency cost 8 young men their lives. 2. Communication systems. Harrington's team had a working radio, but they couldn't make a distress call. Why? Because either the frequency was wrong, they were out of range, or there was nobody listening. This incident showed the British Army the importance of backup communication systems. Radio alone isn't enough. There should be signal flares, mirror signals, emergency beacon systems, and most importantly, central headquarters must be in constant contact with patrol teams. If communication is cut off for a certain period, a search and rescue operation should be launched automatically. Modern armies use GPS tracking systems, satellite phones, and emergency flares, but back then these didn't exist, and Harrington's team disappeared silently. 3. Survival training. In 1940, British soldiers received basic survival training, but there was no training specific to Arctic conditions. Most soldiers were encountering such extreme cold for the first time. Harrington's journal shows the team made basic mistakes. The group split up. Some soldiers panicked and moved alone. Ration management was poor. These mistakes stemmed from lack of training. After the war, British and American armies established comprehensive survival schools. Cold weather training especially became mandatory. Soldiers learned to recognize hypothermia, build snow shelters, protect against frostbite, and most importantly, psychological resilience. Subscribe to my channel because I share military history and survival stories. Now, let's analyze Harrington's team's situation from the perspective of modern survival experts, because this analysis contains not only historical, but also practical information. What should Harrington's team have done? Survival expert and former SAS soldier John Lofty Wiseman examined this incident in the 1990s and made this comment. Harrington was an extraordinary leader, but he faced a force against which even leadership was insufficient: nature. Still,
If some different decisions had been made, at least a few people's chances of survival could have increased. Here are Wiseman's recommendations. 1. Emergency shelter priority. The moment the storm started, the team made emergency camp. This was the right decision, but the shelter wasn't sturdy enough. One of the tents blew away and the rations inside were lost. According to Wiseman, a snow shelter should have been built instead of a tent. Snow is an incredible insulator. If you dig a tunnel and open a small chamber in the middle, you can keep the inside relatively warm with body heat. Of course, this requires time and energy, but it's essential for long-term survival. The Inuit people have been using this technique for thousands of years. Snow houses called igloos can provide above-zero temperatures inside, even when it's minus 40 degrees outside.
2. Group cohesion. Johnson and Davies leaving was a fatal mistake. In survival situations, group cohesion is vital because more body heat is shared. Morale is higher. There's more manpower. If someone gets injured or sick, others can help. Wiseman says 2 people alone are much more vulnerable than being in a group, especially in a storm where visibility is 0. They most likely got lost and fell into a crevasse. 3. Ration management. Harrington's journal shows rations were depleted quickly. 5 days' worth of rations ran out in just 3 days because they lost rations when the tent blew away, and also the body burns more calories in cold weather. According to Wiseman, ration management should have been much more disciplined. Each meal should be distributed precisely, and everyone should get the same amount. Also, water is very important. Trying to quench thirst by eating snow lowers body temperature even more. Snow should be melted and warm water should be drunk. 4. Psychological resilience. Perhaps the most critical factor is psychological resilience. Harrington's journal shows the team's morale gradually dropping. Hope turns to fear and despair. In modern survival training, psychological preparation is very important. Soldiers learn how to think under extreme stress in SERE programs. Panic is the biggest enemy. Staying calm, making rational decisions, and maintaining hope are essential for survival. Watch the video to the end because I'll show this story's connection to modern times. Now, there's another lesson to be learned from this story: respect for the power of nature. Humans tend to see themselves as masters of nature, especially in the age of modern technology. But nature is still the most powerful force. A storm, an avalanche, an earthquake can make all our technology meaningless. Harrington's team were well-equipped, well-trained soldiers, but they still got lost. Because nature is beyond human control, and no matter how prepared we are, sometimes we're helpless against this power. But this doesn't mean hopelessness. On the contrary, it teaches us to be more careful, better prepared, and to respect nature. Similar stories from modern times. This story doesn't belong only to the 1940s. Similar incidents still happen today. Here are a few examples. 2003, Lost American Patrol in Afghanistan. A 4-man team from American Special Forces was conducting reconnaissance in the mountainous region of Afghanistan. They got caught in a snowstorm and couldn't communicate for 2 days. Fortunately, their positions were detected thanks to GPS systems, and they were rescued by helicopter. But this incident reminded modern soldiers how dangerous nature can be. 2008, mountaineers frozen to death in Scotland. On Scotland's Ben Nevis Mountain, 3 experienced climbers got caught in a sudden storm. They called for help by radio, but weather conditions didn't allow helicopters to fly. 3 days later, their bodies were found. A scenario very similar to Harrington's team. 2019, lost skiers in Norway. Interestingly, in the same region, 2 British skiers got lost in a storm. They had modern equipment, GPS, satellite phone, emergency flares. Yet they were missing for 2 days. Fortunately, they communicated their position via satellite phone and were rescued. But this shows how unlucky Harrington's team was. If they had modern technology too, maybe they could have survived. These comparisons show how important technology is, but at the same time that even technology has limits, because sometimes nature is so powerful that no technology is enough. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss stories like this. Now we come to perhaps the most important part of this story: commemoration and remembrance.
Harrington and his team died in 1940, but their memory still lives. In England, every year on November 11th, all war veterans and missing soldiers are commemorated. On this day, a ceremony is held at the Cenotaph Monument in London. The royal family, government officials, and thousands of citizens attend. And there, on the monument's wall, 8 names are written: Sergeant James Harrington, Lieutenant Richard Cooper, Private David Johnson, Private William Davies, Private Thomas Williams, Private Andrew Matthews, Private Christopher Thompson, Private Michael Scott. These names aren't just names. Each is a story. Each is a family. Each had a future they imagined. Maybe Johnson was planning to get married. Maybe Williams wanted to become a doctor. Maybe Scott dreamed of living on a farm. But all of them lost their lives at a very young age in those frozen mountains. Their families lived with pain for years. Harrington's wife, Mary, died in 1965. She never remarried. Her friends say she always carried James's picture with her. Johnson's mother died in 1958. Her last words, "Where is my son buried? I want to take him a flower." These pains are the invisible face of war. Families waiting at home suffer as much as soldiers dying on the front, and this pain continues for generations. A special memorial ceremony in 2010. In 2010, the Norwegian government and the British Embassy organized a special memorial ceremony to honor the 8 missing soldiers. The ceremony was held near the area where the bodies were found. Harrington's grandson, a 45-year-old teacher named James Harrington Jr., attended the ceremony. He told reporters,
"My grandfather, I never met him, but my mother always told me stories about him. What a brave man he was, how much he valued his team. Being here today is very meaningful to me because finally I know where he was, how he died, and I'm proud of him." At the ceremony, the Norwegian Prime Minister also gave a speech. "These soldiers died for our freedom. They lost their lives trying to liberate Norway from Nazi occupation. We will never forget their sacrifice, and we will keep their memory alive forever." This ceremony wasn't just a commemoration, but also a reminder. A ceremony reminding us how merciless war is, how valuable freedom is, and that heroes should never be forgotten. In the next video, I'll tell another incredible story. Subscribe to stay curious. Now, what can we learn from this story? Not just military tactics and survival techniques, deeper, more universal lessons. 1. Courage doesn't guarantee success. Harrington and his team were extremely brave men. They went to a dangerous area to do their duty, but courage doesn't always guarantee success. Sometimes, no matter how brave you are, circumstances can be against you. This doesn't mean courage is insignificant. On the contrary, courage is always valuable, but courage must be supported by smart decisions. 2. Solidarity saves lives. Harrington's journal shows how important team solidarity is. When the group was united, they lasted longer. But when the group split, everyone died faster. This lesson applies not just to military operations, but to daily life. In difficult times, we must look out for each other. Alone, nobody is strong. 3. Hope must be maintained until the last moment. Harrington hoped until his last breath. He continued calling by radio. He kept a journal, because maybe one day someone would find it. And they really did. Hope keeps people alive. Hopelessness accelerates death. Therefore, no matter how difficult it is, hope should always be maintained. 4. Technology is important, but not sufficient. If Harrington and his team had GPS, satellite phone, and modern equipment, maybe they could have survived. But technology doesn't solve everything, because nature is still more powerful. Therefore, we should trust technology but not be blindly dependent on it. Basic survival skills are always important. 5. Every life is valuable. This story isn't just the story of 8 soldiers, 8 families, 8 futures, 8 dreams. Each was unique and valuable. In wars, it's too easy for people to become just numbers. It said 8 missing soldiers and moved on. But every loss means the end of a world, a mother's heart breaking, a spouse being left alone. Therefore, war should never be romanticized. War is pain, and every loss is a tragedy. Finally, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your opinions are very valuable to me. Friends, this 3-part journey ends here. But the story of Harrington and his team never ends, because their memory lives and will continue to live. Maybe you too, if you visit Norway one day, you'll look at those mountains and think, this is where 8 brave men took their last breath, and maybe you'll say a silent prayer for them. Because they died for us, for freedom, for justice, and for their friends. And we must never forget them. So, what's the next video about? In the next video, I'll tell you a completely different story. In 1944, in France, the story of a British pilot's 45-day survival behind enemy lines. The incredible adventure of a hungry and exhausted man who, with the help of French resistance fighters, escaped Nazi patrols. This story is just as dramatic and inspiring as Harrington's story, because this pilot not only survived, but also conducted sabotage behind enemy lines and helped capture dozens of German soldiers. You definitely don't want to miss it, so subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Throughout this video series, I want to thank everyone who is with me. Your comments, likes, and support are very important for this channel to continue. Please leave a comment below. Share what you think about this story, your own thoughts, and maybe similar stories you know. And remember, history isn't just text written in books. History is the story of real people's real suffering and real heroism, and by remembering them, we show them respect. Sergeant James Harrington, Lieutenant Richard Cooper, Private David Johnson, Private William Davis, Private Thomas Williams, Private Andrew Matthews, Private Christopher Thompson, and Private Michael Scott. May these names never be forgotten. May they rest in peace. And see you in the next video. Take care.